Educativa. And I am honored to step in and host RevvED Up's episode today with you all. And so, for those of you that don't know, RevvED Up is a live stream series where we talk with individuals who are leaders and change makers in our community. And we get to hear all about the great things they are doing, as well as their journey that got them to where they are today. We have awarded 25 different individuals with our Impacto Changemaker Awards, and we've already had a few guests on our RevvED Up series. So today we have another changemaker joining us. This changemaker is a mother, advocate, and leader who has been responsible for creating spaces of diversity, equity, and inclusion in various ways, especially for many students. Please help me welcome Raquel McCommon. Bienvenidos, Raquel.
Hey, hola, hola. Thank you for having me.
Of course, yes. We're so excited to have you on. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it and learn more a little bit about our changemaker. So please just tell us a little bit about who you are. What are some of the things that you do? It's likely that you wear multiple hats. So just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so this could be an exhaustive list, and I know you have specific questions about certain aspects of my life right now. So I'll focus on kind of the broader things. In my professional role, both publicly and like within my own spaces, I am a mentor and an advocate, a community member, and volunteer. And I think it's really important to be engaged, not just professionally, but also in spaces to be with the people that you're trying to serve. So if that's volunteering with HDF or if it's volunteering with different local organizations, that's really important to me. As well as being kind of a tough love giver. I think it's really important in my mentorship roles, no matter who I'm talking to, that sometimes I have to say the things that no one else will say, but coming from a loving place. And as a mother, as you said, you kind of learn that along the way, that it's really important to be honest and transparent and be engaged. And I think having fun while doing it is also a big part of my world. Family, spending time with them, but also being able to be active and engaged in all my spaces and enjoying what I do. I don't do anything that I don't enjoy.
Definitely, no, and I definitely think you highlight all of that, just through all of the work that you've done, and even just as the person that you are. And with all that you do, you're also a mother first to a wonderful son that you just mentioned. And I am always awed by the amazing mentoring, mothering, and friendship that you have with him. So, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with your son and what you love most about being a mama?
Oh my gosh, without getting too teary-eyed, being a mother is such an emotional journey. It is not one that is completely like, this is what you do, right? And it's all lined up. It's really
Mhm.
like learn as you go. And being a young mother in college, I had to figure it out really quick and figure out how to continue to live my best life while also pursuing a life that helps him create a best life for himself. And that's been hard. But I am now in a place where he's almost 13. His name is Lucas, and he radiates so much joy and so much of what I know I've tried to instill in him that it just brings my heart so much happiness. At the same time, being able to challenge me and teach me, call me out when I'm not holding up what I practice, what I preach, in those moments or in those moments where life isn't fair or life isn't what we thought it should be because we want to be good and give good things to others and people don't reciprocate that in the same way. And some of those challenges and obstacles of making friends or new relationships or changing schools, there's always something going on. I think, as a mom, being a part of his life and knowing that I'm at least young enough to connect with him in that way is really, really special. And it's definitely something that without that, like I'm not who I am either. And so it's definitely a big component of my identity, but also why I feel like I'm a good mentor and a good servant to the community because at home I do that. And then I also instill that in others outside of this space too.
Definitely. And that's definitely where it starts, of course, is at home. And it's amazing to see that you are showing him these examples of what it is to be a leader and hopefully an advocate as well within our community. And the first time, yeah, I met Raquel was when I became a student at UMKC. And I remember her being one of the first people to help me, whether it was just navigating through the campus or finding resources to stay in touch with the community on campus. So I know she has had an an impact on the university and other students there as well. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with UMKC and the work that you have done during your time there?
Yeah, so getting connected to UMKC is kind of an interesting story because it was never the plan. And I think in general,
Mm,
a lot of us young adults are realizing that our plan's not usually what ends up happening, and the journey takes us to other windy places. So I went to college thinking I was going to be an elementary school teacher. Left Kansas City, was like, yes, I'm going to do it. And then sophomore year, changed my major and got pregnant. And so life just
mm,
changed. My perspective on where I was going changed. So I changed my major, finished my undergrad, and thought, okay, what am I going to do now? I knew I wanted to come back to Kansas City. And I met some really great people at our Masters of Higher Education program um, at UMKC, and was like, okay, maybe this is interesting. And then I had one person that asked me, what is it that you love to do? And that's kind of stuck with me because now I use that in all my spaces. Like, I have to love what I do. And so I only pursue things that make me feel good and know that I'm making an impact on someone else. And so through that, I started working for the Office of Student Involvement and supporting multicultural affairs. And that individual worked in the office. So it was a great just connectedness moment right off the bat. I was like, I'm on campus, I'm pursuing this master's, I'm with people who also care about what I'm doing and what they're doing to serve students. And my master's program really was the highlight of that connectedness to UMKC. I had great professors who really valued being a student. And even though they were faculty, they didn't forget that students should come first. And that mindset, regardless of where you're coming from, if every system is with that construct, then we're definitely going to be super successful because we're putting the people we serve first and not our own ideas or our own perceptions. Or when I was, in school back in the day, I needed this. No, I'm putting Catalina, now that you're in school, I'm thinking about what your needs are. And so that then just pushed me in this trajectory around supporting people. And I got a job in admissions. Didn't think I was going in that direction either, but it was a great opportunity. And that's where we met. And I was working
mhm,
as our multicultural recruiter and meeting so many diverse people from all over Jackson County, Missouri, and doing bilingual programming and bilingual recruitment, and looking at this bigger scale of impact around higher education and the access or the limitations that even just with language can create in not pursuing education. And then that pushed me forward. I actually left UMKC for a year and worked at Guadalupe Centers High School in teaching college seminar and thinking about, okay, let's get them before they even get to college. Like, how do they know they want to be in
mhm.
college or even think of pursuing anything after high school? And within the urban core and within limited access to education, that's a huge barrier for a lot of people, especially within the Latino, Latina, and Latinx community. And so that was a great asset. And then I was blessed with a beautiful opportunity to come back to UMKC and work specifically in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so definitely that full circle moment where, you're doing the work, but it's not necessarily the title that you bring. It's just the passion behind it. And then being able to have a title that directly ties to this work around access, around equity, around diversity. And then thinking about that inclusion aspect. It's not just having a seat at the table, but having a voice at that table where you're also sitting.
Yeah, no, and I think you definitely mentioned kind of what my next question was like what motivates you. But yeah, you already discussed how it was just that passion that you have, for helping others, and I love that because I feel like that passion is definitely that fuel that we need, especially when it comes to this type of work.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I love that you exemplify that and continue to. So with all of the commitment that you have given to the university, I know that your work is well appreciated there. um, Although you are no longer on campus, you still continue to do meaningful work in other ways. For instance, your current position at Mission Vision Project. So, can you tell us a little bit about your position there and what kind of work you are involved in?
Yeah, so this is a new nonprofit to Kansas City, but the work of the nonprofit has been around for over 18 years. But the whole mission and concept is thinking about how we diversify our healthcare workforce. Similar to the Latinx Education Collaborative, thinking about how we diversify teachers here in the community and bringing more Latino, Latina teachers to this space. Now we're looking at healthcare and looking at our nurses, our pharmacists, our dentists, our assistants, our physicians, how do we create spaces that also mirror the community that we're serving? So they're not so homogenous and generationally diverse as well, and culturally diverse. So the mission is centered around the mantra, if you can see it, you can be it. I know if I saw someone like me in these spaces in healthcare, I was probably more likely to think I could be in that space. And I know what I look like, let alone every other pigmented on the spectrum, and thinking about these spaces and access to seeing people like you be in professional spaces that maybe no one in your family or even in your circle or even the doctor you see on a regular basis looks like you at all. So where are you going to get that exposure? So that's what the organization is founded on. And so our mission is thinking about programs and spaces where we can create that social capital and interaction. So if it's from K through 8 and thinking about put on white coat on, let's bring some medical student, nursing, pharmacy, dentistry students into your space and show you people that look like you doing exactly this work, and showing you that kind of inspirational moment. And it's okay if you don't pursue it, right? It's more about giving you an option and knowing that it is an option, so that you can choose when you get down to that point of what do you want to be when you grow up, beyond the firefighter, teacher, police officer moment. But you think about, okay, I can actually do this. And I saw someone like me do this, so I know I can do this. We also are creating high school programs, a physician pipeline program with high schools here in Kansas City, as well as looking at our medical schools, nursing, pharmacy, and dentistry schools, and creating that critical mass of professionals who are African American, Black, Latino, Latina, Latinx, or Native in one space, along with the student learners who are also in that space, and thinking about that critical mass of people together, creating that cyclical partnership. And at the end, hoping that people come back to Kansas City after their training or education and work here and help continue that cycle to continue to advance and really explore a more diverse picture of what healthcare can look like.
Definitely, yeah. And you mentioned representation, and of course, that's what we advocate for a lot here at RevvED. Definitely is to bring that representation into the classroom. But of course, there's other areas that could have lack of representation as well, like healthcare, as you mentioned. And I think that's very important to bring up. So going off of that, what are some of the biggest issues that you do see within the healthcare system? And you kind of mentioned a little or bit about what your work does, but what exactly are you doing to tackle those issues?
Yeah, health equity is a big thing that's a big buzzword conversation right now here in Kansas City. A lot of different organizations and foundations are thinking about health equity in a more tangible lens, and not just like, let's talk about it, let's actually think about action. One of the things that we're connected to right now is a network of people who are all working towards that same mission. And so we're working on different projects to think about how do we align not just with each other, but work collectively as a community of Kansas City and saying, hey, we're going to push the needle. We are going to be the change. We're not just going to sit by and let this happen. And so being able to do that and think about it more as a collective community effort is actually really inspiring, but also helps keep that motivation, because sometimes you see in these healthcare systems, I mean, access to healthcare, let alone transportation, to health disparities and access to good food and healthy diets, or just community members that actually support and listen to their patients when they say they're in pain and they really believe them. Like, there are lots of little things, along with language, along with talking to people like you care about them intentionally, right? And there are a lot of great people out there in healthcare, so it's not to say that we don't have them, but we need to see that the system is bigger than the people sometimes, and that can keep those barriers in place, and the dollars where they maybe aren't as dispersed as the way they need to, as well as thinking about how we create change on a broader scale, so that on the micro scale, this one individual that comes in and asks, needs help, we're able to meet them where they are, because everything else is built to meet them where they are, versus trying to create more barriers and more red tape or more lines or more money or X, Y, and Z. I can't find someone who really can listen to what I'm trying to say, right? And have access to people who are really going to be there holistically for every patient as well. And that's just,
Definitely.
thinking about from the hospital physician maybe lens, but nursing lens, pharmacy lens, dentistry lens, our occupational therapists, our physical therapists. I mean, it goes in every aspect of our health construct, from insurance as well. So there's a lot. But I think as we are thinking about change, we really have to think, what can we handle and what can we manage? And then how do we partner with others who are doing similar work so we can collectively move the needle, and don't get bogged down by some of that overwhelming feeling that, how is this going to make a difference? Because sometimes that's a hard place to not avoid. And so how we can move past that is really important as well as a community.
Definitely, and it can definitely be challenging for many to have access to proper health. And so, why do you believe it is important to have that representation there within this type of industry?
That's a really interesting question because personally, I have my own opinions, but I also know many, many people who've had really bad experiences. I can speak to the fact that I was born with cleft lip and palate. I had 10 reconstructive plastic surgeries. I was in and out of the hospital since birth. Um, but no one ever encouraged me to go into medicine or health. And yet I was around that and exposed to it. You'd think I would have all of the influence in the world that would say, you could do this. No, actually, most people told me, be a teacher. You're great. You're a leader. You could be a teacher. And that construct stayed with me. And I just think personally, I think about how we're not thinking about how people can be anything, even if they don't necessarily have the stereotypical skills or things that we expect people to have because of what we think this construct says, right? And state testing and all these other board exams that say you have to meet this standard. We need to think more broadly about how we think about raising kids, about how we raise and encourage each other and really build each other up more, to be whatever we want to be, and also be authentically ourselves. And I think there are a lot of constructs that keep us from being 100% ourselves. So in these spaces, we have to think a little bit outside of the box. We have to think outside of the status quo or the norms that we've been cultured to believe throughout our entire life, so that we can say, you know what, actually, we're going to think about this differently. We're going to go this path. We're actually going to open the doors this wide so that people can see all of their options and not this narrow scope. But we also have to make sure there's access to those journeys along the way. So, representation for me is personal, but it's also taking it a step further and saying, how are our communities going to really change how they see healthcare and not feel burned or feel like they don't see them for who they are, or continue this social construct that's been built for years and centuries, right? And so we have to be intentional about finding people who will be in those spaces who care and will also be in positions of power to create change over time.
No, and I think that even goes back to kind of what you said earlier about how that passion plays a role into that as well and fuels that. And so I just was wondering, what kind of advice do you have for people who do want to get involved, whether it's in the industry or just in general within their communities? If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Involvement can be lots of things. I think sometimes we
Mhm.
get overwhelmed. It's like, I don't have time. I have this responsibility. I have that responsibility. I think if the pandemic has taught us anything, things are a lot more accessible than we thought because people had to adapt. So you can do stuff from home. Go to the library if you need Wi-Fi or access to resources. But being able to volunteer and think about your ways of impacting, I think comes from what you care about and thinking about, what do I care about and how can I help? I think I have a group of people who ask me that frequently. It's like, how can I help? What can I do? So it's like, here, can you person this table and, help people get checked in at this event? Or is it, HGF partnered me with a student here and they just needed help with their application to a scholarship. And I read it and gave them feedback. Sometimes it's around your strengths and your skills. Sometimes it's around what the needs are and finding ways to meet that need. And then also being intentional, right? Like if we are, I want to help out and give back to the community. We already discussed earlier before we came on live about how fast summer went and like, oh my gosh, how did we get to this point? But I know that I've done a lot to get here as well. And so how we are intentional about, every quarter I'm going to do this, or I'm going to go ahead and sign it up so it's on my calendar. And that way I can stay diligent and accountable to myself, and knowing I make this a priority for me. And I know that it's a priority for my son because I'm intentional about where I engage him. And so he has that exposure as well. And he's coming with me and seeing what I'm doing, because that role modeling is super important. I bring mentees with me. I'm like, Catalina, are you free? You want to go? It's really important that we also not just do it for ourselves, but we bring others in our circles. I bring my sister, I bring my mom, I bring my stepdad. It's like, however we can also get engaged together, because that also is good bonding time with us, but it also teaches good ways for us to stay involved and stay active, so that time doesn't pass us by and we're like 50 years and we're like, how did we get here?
No, definitely. I think, yeah, we know that it definitely takes a village to raise someone, as they say.
Yeah.
It's definitely about coming together in community, and yeah, and bringing those people along with you. So I love that, and I definitely think you have done that and continue to. And so that kind of takes me to my next question about, after receiving the Impactful Changemaker Award from us, what does it mean to you? And why do you think it's important to recognize Latinx change makers within the greater KC area?
It means the world to me. Growing up in a biracial home, and not always feeling fully Latina because of societal pressure and peers and questions and doubts, and even just the way I look at it appear to people, it means a lot to be recognized for something that I feel so passionately, authentically myself in. So there's a personal anecdote there, but I think it's also really important that we are finding those kind of hidden gems that may not be visible to everyone in the community. UMKC community, yeah, they probably know my name, or at least somebody knows who I am, because that's where my circle has been. But to broaden that scope is also really meaningful, because it brings light to all the people in all these different spaces doing such great work, and how we can also, thinking about that community mindset, bring us together to celebrate that work. And knowing that we're not doing it alone, even though we might be in our own individual spaces. I'm not the only Latina here in Kansas City doing great work, becoming a change maker, continue to influence our culture and communities. And that in itself is empowering and inspiring and motivating to keep doing the work, right? And thinking, okay, there are other people, and how do we double that number next year? Like, how do we continue to advance what we as a community need to be collectively doing together?
Definitely, yeah, and I love that. And I believe that, it is important to recognize others, in order to, shine a light. And that's what we try to do here, as, give that support and give those resources to people like you, so that you guys are able to go out there and make the change as well. And it's again, it's just all a full-on circle of everyone working together, and providing that access and these opportunities for others less fortunate.
And
And
celebrating. We don't
yes,
celebrate
yes,
enough. We do a lot of work,
exactly.
and especially Latinas, we get so in the grind that we forget to like pause and celebrate. So I think that's a big part of that too, is like, no, we need to pause and we need to celebrate our successes.
Definitely. Of course, yes, I love that. And so, what or who motivates and inspire you to do the work that you do?
Uh, all my mentees. And I mean, I really call them all. Every mentee, whether they're my age or older or younger, if I'm helping support you, you're my mentee, even if for a moment or for a lifetime. And each conversation, I was talking with a mentee today, and it's so inspiring to be in those spaces and hear so many different perspectives about what struggle they might be going through, or what brings them joy, or what discouragement they might have, that I can remind them how great they are. Like, I love being the cheerleader. If I have to provide tough love, I round it out with positivity and encouragement, and that reminder that, like, you can do it. Si se puede. Like, you're not alone. We got you. And being in spaces that replenish. I'm definitely an extrovert, so people replenish me. They fill up my cup. So if it's not time with my mijito, like my son, or if it's not time with peers, It's also people just going through life and knowing that I can be a value added in some capacity. And sometimes it's just a hug. Sometimes it's just a high five or an elbow fist bump, wherever we're at right now. But being able to see the work impacted and knowing that my time and exhaustion sometimes or overwhelmingness is all because of this one really great moment brings me so much joy and keeps me motivated to continue to do the work that I do.
I love that. Yeah. And it's definitely about finding those things that keep us motivated and keep us going. And I'm glad that you have that. And of course, that's why we're here as well, to offer that support as well. And so, if people want to get involved or want to learn more about Mission Vision Project, how can they find that information?
Oh, absolutely. They can visit our website. It is going to be changing and updating soon, but for now, they can visit www.mvpkc.org. And on there are ways to see what we're doing and programs, but also if you just want to donate, you're welcome to donate as well. The organization is continuing to thrive and has built a lot of partnerships across Kansas City. So there are lots of ways for you to engage or just support or cheerlead from the side.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Looks like we have one comment. I'm going to bring it up here on the screen. It's from our very own Christy.
Yay!
Yes. All right. Well, we love shining a light on the important work that you do and that many others provide to create a space for Latinos. And so I wanted to thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. And we appreciate all that you do for the community. Continue to make an impact in our community and world.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure just seeing you, but also chatting with you too and sharing a little bit more about me.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Raquel. Muchísimas gracias to everyone that tuned in. Be sure to pass this video along by sharing. I also added the website that Raquel just mentioned about Mission Vision Project in the comments. So if you want to learn more about that, you can just go ahead and check below. And just be sure to like our page to keep updated with what's going on in the community and see future events and videos like this one. Buenas noches a todos.
Adios.